bringing the special meeting of the Duncannon Borough Council to order on Monday, August 8, 2016. If I could ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence. Mr. Keene, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. I apologize. I did it backwards again. Fire me. Next week. If I could welcome the Borough Secretary to have a roll call of the officials present.
Mr. Crocomel.
Here.
Mr. Epley.
Present.
Mr. Lanhard.
Here.
Mr. Nace.
Here?
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Here.
Ms. Young.
Here.
Mayor Conrad. Solicitor Sigar.
Here.
And Andrea Brown. So over here.
Thank you. That being said, if you have electronic devices, including telephones and pagers, please silence them or place them on vibrate out of respect for the meeting proceedings. We have at least 2 pages of sign-in for public comment. The first is Ashley Hill, maybe. Tim Oxt, yes.
Yes, I understand this meeting's to talk about canceling the police coverage for Penn Township and Duncannon. I think you'd be doing a big disservice to the whole town by doing that. And then I have a few questions for the borough, also related to that. How did the contract negotiations go? You're going to try to renegotiate some of the contract?
We haven't at this point had contract renegotiations.
So we're just going to blindly cancel, or?
I don't think it's blindly, it's a matter of finances. We simply don't have the money to last us through the year to pay this contract.
And that leads me into the next question. I'm going to direct this to Christine. Do we have funds to make it to the end of the year? We actually voted last meeting, you guys voted on the third quarter. Did we pay that? Has that been paid yet, the third quarter contract?
That check has not been sent, no.
And can I ask why not?
There's a number of reasons that it hasn't been sent, one being this evening's meeting, but we need to have the discussion. We, in my opinion, were misinformed last meeting about the financial situation and what funds were available to get us through the end of the year. I mean, I know typically we do public comment and then go into the meeting. We don't typically answer the questions in public comment as we're going along. But one of the reasons Mr. Morgan is here is to give us a better idea of our financial situation and how we're going to be moving forward. So he'll be sharing that information through the EIP process.
You're going to share that tonight?
I have some very preliminary things that I can share.
Okay. Timber fund, what kind of balance you got in the timber fund?
Right now, there's been $140,000 transferred out of the timber fund, so there's about $70,000 in the timber fund as we sit here right now.
Okay. What about the reserve fund? You have a reserve
There
fund
is
also?
no reserve fund per se. There's earmarked CDs that are really not reserve funds. They were earmarked for certain capital items. So there's really no operating reserve fund per se in the borough to pay operating expenses. It's to replace equipment when it needs to be replaced. So if that money's spent now to maintain operations, then there'll have to be a borrowing or some form of financing of equipment when it needs to be replaced going forward in the future.
So basically, we didn't have the good information last time, we're saying. Do you agree with that, Jeff?
Yeah, I made the comment last time that was talked about. I guess I'll have to wait and see what he says. I was going off of information that I was told, and I'm interested to hear what's going to be said too.
Basically, as probably a lot of people know, the state police cover all of Perry County, which is 550 square miles. Penn Township covers 26. The Duncannon Borough is 0.4. How's that going to work out? Do we know how many cops or state police are on duty?
I don't know that answer. I know Sergeant Logan and perhaps perhaps the lieutenant from Newport are planning to be here at our regular meeting next week. Certainly get some of that information.
Will the decision be made tonight, or will it be at the next meeting about the contract, police contract?
We're going to discuss it tonight. Certainly if a motion is brought forth, it may be decided tonight. The reason for calling the special meeting was the time sensitivity, and if the finances are where we think they may be, the funds may simply not exist to move forward, and every day is about $500. So trying to not belabor that any more than we have to.
So what happens when we get all this financial stuff figured out and we say, wow, we do have $800,000 set in here we didn't account for, then what?
Well, I can answer the question. You truly don't have that because you have all of the bank balances. There isn't $800,000 in total in the borough right now. So the answer is there's not going to be $800,000 sitting there. Some of those funds are internally restricted for capital. Some of those funds are restricted by law and can be transferred out of the respective utility accounts. So as far as the general fund of the borough, the general fund is pretty much flat broke. The issue is the general fund pretty much has collected all of its revenue for the year. Primarily, the revenue source is real estate taxes. We're sitting here basically have just gotten through July, and we still have 5 out of 12 months of expenses to pay and no future revenue to pay them. Hence the use of the timber fund. Once you deplete the timber fund, you have no other reserves. And my preliminary understanding, I haven't seen the maps, but that the timber revenue of the borough is pretty much exhausted. The property has been timbered. There's very limited future timbering in the near future until the growth of the property replenishes itself. So the times of funding or balancing the general fund with that one-time source of revenue are gone.
That kind of contradicts some of what was said last time about the timber.
That's based on that study that is being done, but not on the words of our forester. Our forester would say the opposite. And our forester's the one that's gotten us the contracts we've got the past few years.
The forester, if my understanding is correct, and I've only looked at a preliminary map, okay, and I'm certainly not a forester, so I'll bow down to that person, but what was originally labeled on an old map I looked at that was commercially timberable because of the slopes and so forth, has been timbered. I mean, the aerial
Yeah,
photograph.
the map from what, 72, right?
But it vastly shows, and a lot of the issue of the timbering on the land you own is because of the slope of the property. It can't be safely commercially timbered. You know, and that really hasn't changed in the last 100 years of timbering, unless we want to put mules on the mountain and pull logs down. You know, which is still a possibility. So I don't know the answer to that, but one of the things I can tell you is you don't plug operating expenses with one-time sources of revenue that aren't repetitive and renewable on an annual basis, and that is what has been happening in Duncannon Borough for a number of years. In addition, what has been happening for a number of years, I think, and I think Mr. Kirkhoff and I have had this conversation before, is that there's been significant deferred maintenance on a lot of the utility systems, and you can see it in some of the budgets where expenditures were budgeted for much higher levels and then came in much lower than those budgeted levels because there wasn't cash here in the past to pay for those projects. So that has created a kind of a domino effect, if you will, particularly as it relates to the general fund. Now, the utility funds, you can always raise rates. Nobody likes rates being raised, but you know, one of the issues in Duncannon Borough is not alone in this. You know, I'm doing this for about 4 or 5 different municipalities right now, and they're all struggling with the fact that revenue bases are declining, expenses still continue to go up, you know, insurance, particularly insurances, health insurance and the like, and revenue's going down, expenses going up, somewhere they meet, and you have a problem. And your problem actually began, I believe, in about 2013. From what I can see. And since that point, we've kind of been playing a shell game with the one-time sources of revenue, and also all of our cash collections come into the general fund, and then we transfer the utility monies to the respective funds. The length of delay between those transfers has been getting longer and longer. And in some cases, the money has not even transferred to those utility funds. right now, and I believe it's the second sheet of paper I just gave everybody, I gave you the last cash report, and I apologize, the audience doesn't have it, but I'll read it to you so everybody hears the numbers. On July 26th, the former fiscal person put together the weekly balance banking review, and the general fund had a projected balance of $28,000. What was not considered in that balance was the fact that there was $113,000 of cash receipts that were in that balance that were owed to the other utility funds. Still owed to the other utility funds. So that plus the stack of bills that's laying over there about this thick still has to be paid, and the general fund will be significantly in the hole, even though we've already transferred $100,000 of timber. The other sheet of paper I have given to council is kind of an analysis of the last 3 years' budgets of the borough, and I think you can all have an appreciation of this, and I don't mean to sound condescending if I do, but this is just some pretty simple math. The general fund budgets the last 3 years, and I'm going to read you some astounding numbers. In 2014, the budgeted revenue was $381,000, not counting what they plan to spend from fund balance or reserves. The expenditures were $442,000 for a $61,000 loss. 2015, the budget was $382,000. Expenditures were $454,000, budgeted at $640,000 for a planned $258,000 loss. Actual loss came in at about $86,000. Year to date today, we have about a $64,000 loss in the general fund. So in the last 3 years, somewhere the general fund has borrowed $245,000 from the utility funds. I mean, it had to come from somewhere because at 12/31/13, the bank balance was only $36,000. And the last cash sheet showed us at 28, so call it even. We borrowed an additional $245,000 from the utility funds to maintain general government operations. So what that tells me is on an annual basis, and I'm just going to give you the facts and then the board gets to decide, that's why you get paid the big bucks. On an annual basis, you're about $100,000 in the hole, spending no money on capital in the general fund. That is virtually about a 75% in the general fund, just to break even and maintain the current level of services you provide. No new services, no cuts in service, just maintain the services you have.
Does that include the police contract?
Yes, that does include the police contract. Without the police contract, you'd have about a $25,000 to $30,000 surplus in the general fund. And I see Mr. Kirkhoff shaking his head so he can follow my numbers clearly. So that is kind of a very quick, as fast as I can do it on 3 sheets of paper, thumbnail of the last 3 years and where you're at right now, to the best of my ability, given the fact that there's a lot of financial information that needs to be reconciled yet.
Anything else, Mr. Ox?
No, that's it for me.
Ms. Audette?
Yeah, so kind of writing off of Mr. Ox here. As everyone knows, I'm kind of just going to come out and say it. I'm here because I wanted to make sure that it was a financial situation and that it wasn't a vendetta that I know a couple of you guys have against the police chief. And I know a lot of people don't like him. I mean, heck, I even have some issues with him, but he's got to do a job. And I think that as a police chief and as a person, that's going to be something he puts forward first. Not, I mean, if something were to happen to your house, Mr. Epley, I'm pretty sure if you had a vendetta, he's still going to show up to save you or help you. I don't want somebody's vendetta on this board affecting my lifestyle here in this town. And I think that's what is going to end up happening here. Because I know a lot of you, you can sit here and be quiet and deny it and everything, but I'll be the bitch that comes out and says, I've heard you guys say it. I've heard you say you have a problem with it. So I want to make sure that all of you say to my face, one by one, and everyone else here, that what this is about the financials and not about your personal problem. And if you guys can't say it to my face and everyone here, then you need to step back and think about it. On top of that, why are we going in and canceling a contract when we have no idea what coverage we're gonna have from the state police? I mean, I can't believe we didn't put in a request. I contacted the state police today and talked to them. No one from our council has put in a request to know how many state troopers are on duty each shift and what area their coverage per, I guess, per car that they're running, I guess is how they explained it to me. So you guys are coming to us and saying, we're gonna cancel this because of financials. Okay, fine, but what is our protection? We have drugs. Hell, right behind Miss Jackie's house over here, we've got a drug house that's, you know, popping them in and out. Tim and I were down here 10 years ago dealing with this. I'm not dealing with it again. This is something that can be solved. So I wanna know who's gonna put in the request today, or tomorrow, or by the end of this week to find out what state troopers are covering this area, how many they have on per shift, because I want that answer by Friday. And it's not an answer that's gonna take weeks to do. It's a simple call, a simple form that we fill out, and they'll provide us the information. So I'm just wondering who's gonna do that for me and get that for us, because that's very important before we decide what we're gonna do with our police contract.
They've requested 6 or 8 line items of information from the borough. We have not yet provided that to them. I received that at the end of last week. Not knowing what the outcome is tonight, I don't know that we have that information to provide to them.
Several of
I
those
think-
items of information that they requested were in fact based on the date of the end of service, and it was information that we would have needed to have tonight to give to them. We could not have provided that information to them before the end of this meeting.
What I heard.
Mr. Nace and I have both been in contact with the state police.
What I've heard is the contract's already ended, you're not paying them for the third quarter. Is that not what I was just told? We didn't pay it, and
We
Don't
did
have
not
the
send
money
the
to pay?
check, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to. That's what tonight's meeting's about.
So I guess that kind of leads into my second question where I was gonna refer to the attorney was how is something that is voted on and selected to move forward not done once it's been selected by and approved by the board to do so? Is there a certain time, allotted amount of time, and this meeting is within that allotted amount of time?
They're allowed to reconsider a motion.
So to reconsider the motion, does that have to also have a public meeting? Is that what this is for?
This is a public meeting, yeah.
And this is it, this is to rescind that motion?
This is a public meeting for purposes of the borough, and that's a borough action that could be considered here tonight if they wish.
And just out of curiosity, something that I noticed in the last few meetings that I've attended is, with our police department, the last few meetings we haven't really had reports from them. Previous years, we've received reports on how many tickets they've issued, speeding, how many citations, how many arrests they've made, current activity. Is that something that we don't get from the police department with Penn Township? Is that not in the contract to receive that on a monthly basis?
I gave that report for them last month.
Okay, so you were here last month and I wasn't, but then the last 3 months you weren't here and I was. Gotcha.
I was here
Okay.
last month and I gave the report.
I got it. So if we, yeah, never mind. That's all I have.
Mike Schott.
Tim and Heather pretty much said what I want to say, but if they want to use my time, they're welcome to it.
I'm good, Mike.
You're good?
Bob Finn.
Tim covered a lot of what I had questions on. But quickly, we have a finance committee, is that correct? And who's on that finance committee?
Myself,
Christie's the chair, Jeffrey and Daryl are on the committee.
Okay. So, Jeff, you're on that?
Yes.
Okay. You seemed to indicate earlier that some of this financial information was new to you?
I mean, all this we just got is new. These are the newest updates. Some of this information they gave us is new, yes.
Okay, so how new is that information? Today?
Friday and today.
Yeah, so all of this is just coming to light as you investigate this depth of financial mess we're in.
Well, one of the issues, just so it's very clear, what we have been engaged, our firm has been engaged to do what's called an early intervention program, financial 5-year strategic plan.
Right.
Okay. That process normally would involve us coming in, looking at the financial information, it's on record in the accounting system, and analyzing that, telling you what's going right, what's going wrong, what changes you can make. What we found very early on, almost day one, was we asked for a series of information. The first piece of information we asked for is the borough accounts for its financial records on a cash basis, which means it records its revenue when it physically receives the cash, it records its expenses when it physically pays the bill. Not when it incurs the liability, not when it bills the customer. So we asked for bank account reconciliations, which is the control over cash. Bank account reconciliations haven't been done since 2013. So we don't know where the true cash balances are. We have an idea what's in the bank. We don't know what outstanding checks are out there against that have already been written.
So you're saying 2013 is the last
Year
year?
where bank reconciliations were done. And they were done by the audit firm who audited the borough. Then we said, okay, if we don't have good bank reconciliations, can we see the last audit for the borough, which is the 2014 audit? What we found was the auditors gave an adverse financial opinion on the borough's finances. They said they couldn't audit them, they were in poor condition. The records were in poor condition.
And that was 2014?
That was 2014. Then we said, okay, let's just look at the general ledger and let's see if we can see if everything's recorded in the general ledger. Because there have been a lot of changes in borough staff over the past, number of years, 2.5 years to be exact. What we found is a lot of information is not recorded in the accounting system. In fact, there are a large number of bank accounts that aren't even in the accounting system. So we couldn't really get a good handle on the finances to begin our EIP. We went to the borough manager, we went to the finance committee, we came to a borough council meeting, and our recommendation was, you need help. And we think we can help you get some money from the state to pay for the help. And what we've done is we've basically written an $80,000 grant application. The state pretty much has given us their verbal blessing, and will give you 100% funding for that $80,000 to clean up the fiscal books and records and make them auditable and determine exactly where you are at fiscally. That is in process of being approved. That has not been approved. But in the interim, because things were in such a bad condition where fiscal personnel at some points in time did not have enough money in the general fund to pay the bills, we came in with some stopgap measures and helped out. Not what we're supposed to be doing, but we came in and helped out just to get through to keep the borough running. What we found during that process is what we just said tonight, what I said earlier. I don't have hard and fast numbers because I haven't delved into them in painstaking detail. I got a cursory review. The picture is changing almost minute by minute when I'm here. We found additional obligations since I put these things together, which aren't even listed on these pieces of paper, that I'm really not prepared to talk about tonight, but I know they haven't been paid. I just don't know how much the obligations are right now, but it's tens of thousands of dollars. We believed we were relatively debt-free. We found today that we have a $300 and some thousand outstanding Penvest loan. So every time we turn around, the picture keeps sliding in the wrong direction. I don't mean to make it sound doom and gloom, but it keeps sliding in the wrong direction. And our cash position keeps getting worse, not better. And we can't grow money in the bank account. If it's not in the bank account, we can't grow it. And right now, our revenue side of the equation in the borough is not keeping pace with the expense side of the equation. And not just the general fund.
Okay,
It
excuse
is
me.
almost as bad in the water fund.
I just want to clarify, okay, because these guys sat here with me over the years. This is not what was reported to us on a monthly basis. No deficits were reported. A Penvest loan, by the way, is for a utility which pays for that.
Right.
Okay, so that's not a borough debt, that's a utility debt. So that's irrelevant. We've been told by our timberman many times that we should continue to timber on a regular basis. So either somebody lied and we have to have an investigation, or
I believe
you haven't quite figured it out yet, because according to what we heard, we had different offset accounts at a bank.
you have different CDs in the bank.
Right,
Certificates
they
of
were to
deposit in the
offset
bank.
interest costs. Well, the way it's been reported to us, we had a balanced budget every year.
You haven't had a balanced budget for the
Well,
last 3 years.
Then
I
I
can
think we
guarantee you,
need
I
an
can
investigation
guarantee you.
here to find out what the bottom line is after you get it all figured
You
out.
had,
But I'm not sure you have a good eye on what's happening. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that there were that many lies told over the years, but it's not impossible, I understand.
one of the things I will tell you very concretely, you know, and your budget is your budget. You've all had your budget. If you've looked at your budget planned to spend those CDs the last 3 years, each of the last 3 years to balance the budget. So the budget planned to spend your reserves each of the last 3 years. So if you spend them in year one, you didn't have them for year 2 and 3, but you kept spending at that rate. That I'm very clear on. There is no misunderstanding. This one piece of paper I put together for you shows you exactly where the budget that
I
wasn't.
did not get a copy of that stuff.
Oh, I apologize.
That's fine.
I apologize. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a set here. But the one piece of paper clearly identifies, because what I did was I removed all of the reserve funds out of the budget to show you what I believe is a more realistic budget, removing all of the reserve funds that you had accumulated that were planned to be spent. And if you look at the general fund, even just for 16, the 16 budget, very top left-hand corner, your planned revenue is $375,000, your planned expenditures is $574,000.
And do those expenditures account for the fact that we share the cost with the utilities, and part of those costs are theirs, not ours?
Yes, those expenditures do account for that.
So this is
20%,
after the utilities have paid their share?
the utilities pay 80% of some of those shared costs. The general fund pays 20%, yes. If you look though, if you go down the page, which is what is most concerning to me, is every 2016 budget for every fund, including the utility funds, is budgeted to experience a loss. The water fund is budgeted to experience a $146,000 loss in addition to the general fund $199,000 loss. I didn't put those together. I'm just reporting back to you what was approved by prior councils.
Did you remove the capital improvement line items?
No. But that is what I'm saying. If you remove those, then you have a bigger issue because you have deferred maintenance, which means you're not maintaining your utility systems, and that will come back to bite the borough twice as expensive in the future if you forego them now. So you're almost in a position where you have to forego them now until you get on your feet, but then you're going to have to double down on them in a future plan, you know, to get back in a position where the system's being adequately maintained, or all 4 systems are being adequately maintained. So the issue is, my concern is, if somebody told you you were not in a deficit position in a budget, that was not the fact. And I didn't put these budgets together. I'm just reporting them back to you, what I see in those budgets.
Well, that's what they reported, I believe.
And that was clearly
That was clear,
erroneous.
if you dug into the budget the last 3 years, it was clear that they were planning on spending down reserves
Yes.
each of those last 3 years. So I followed that rather closely from the time that.
What
you
is
guys-
also not considered in this document that you have in front of you is the current 2016 expenditure levels do not contemplate the sewer items to remedy the EPA or the DEP violation letters, or to rectify the water capital improvements for the reservoir liner. And also do not consider the fact of the one culvert replacement, because they are not budgeted items in the budget. So the problem is even worse than what that piece of paper looks like that I put in front of you. To the tune of whatever those numbers add up to. You know, I've heard as much as, 500,000 in the aggregate till we're done with what we're talking about. So When you look at the cumulative effect, right now, I believe the borough probably is somewhere in the neighborhood of $750,000 in the hole and has $300,000 of pen test debt.
Gina Myers, you said maybe?
So,
She
She has money.
Could I interrupt? Please excuse me. I have to leave. I have just a regular meeting night for another municipality which I represent. They have a public hearing, a disputed land use issue scheduled for 7:30, and I must attend. Is there anything that you wish me to address before I?
Does anyone have anything for the solicitor? We'll be in touch.
I'm sure you will. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
My apologies. It's interesting stuff.
Kathy and Tim Smith did not indicate either way. Everyone else appears to be a no. There were some that came in after sign-in. Does anyone else would like to speak?
Can I
Ms.
change
Sacco?
mine to a yes?
Sure. Margie Sacco.
I do want to address one of the questions that you had. After the last meeting, I went up to the state police barracks and asked them if we could possibly get something in writing as to what kind of coverage we can expect if or when we need them, and they said they would do one better. They would come to the meeting. I've been emailing them back and forth also. My suggestion would be, if you have any questions, show up at the next meeting, because Sergeant Ligon and Lieutenant Bernard will both be here to answer any and all questions that you may have. And if you have any questions that sound pretty specific, if you let council know, they can email them so that they can be prepared to answer the questions when they get here. So, the way I understand it is tonight, we're canceling the police contract, and that takes effect at midnight tonight?
Tonight, we're reconsidering the action to pay the third quarter. That may come out exactly as it did the first time. We haven't taken the action, so I don't know how that's going to play. There was some additional information or some conflicting information which would, to what was reported at the regular July meeting, based on correspondence with Mr. Morgan. My summary is that there was some hesitation, and there was, I think, discomfort at this table with paying that. And some information was suggested that Mr. Morgan believed that we would, with a couple small cuts or something to that effect, I think was your comment, Mr. Kirkhoff, we should be able to pay the third and fourth quarter. And that was contrary to
Nice.
everything that I had learned up to that point. So,
I mean, because what else can be cut? I don't think that the police coverage is something that, I'm sure there's something somewhere that can be cut other than the police contract for third quarter to pay this contract, to at least get us through third quarter until we can have another meeting, until, people can start figuring out what's going on and start, so, I mean, I'm not settling with this. And Tim and I, we're not going to settle with this. We had to deal with drug issues 10 years ago when we had wonderful Gary Durr on duty, and shit was not fixed then. And you guys are telling me that we're gonna cut our police department. And just 2 years ago, I had two gentlemen on one of my rental properties swinging a metal pipe iron at me, and I came at them with a shotgun and a Rottweiler, and that didn't back them down. In Police Township, I think it was, Penn Township, there he is, yes. That gentleman showed up just like that to cover my butt, to protect me on a rental property. And come to find out, the gentleman ended up having to be arrested because he was avoiding his parole, breaking and entering. He had already had previous history. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and let you guys, I know that there's personal issues here. And if you guys just aren't gonna come out and say, there's a way to handle this. I understand the funding issue. I personally think that once you get it fixed, we need to contact the state and have an investigation done on our town. And if you guys aren't willing to do it, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll be willing to call the state and have them investigate our township, our borough, for finances, because this is bullshit. It's not y'all are new, I understand that, but stuff has to be done. So, if that's what I gotta do, I'm gonna do it. I understand that there's other investigations going on that people are not happy with and pleased with, but guess what? I'm gonna be the one that calls. And I'll tell you right to your face and up front. I want the cops to stay on duty. What I have to do, I'll start digging, I'll start knocking door to door to door. I will even start contacting the state police, I'll start researching, I'll do anything and I have to This town is not getting better, it's getting worse. You want people to stay here with money, like Tim and I'd have to say we are probably one of the higher incomes in this town. You want to build it up? How about you guys start focusing on people who care about this town and worrying about their needs? You have 2 young children. I'm sure you're going to get married and have children. I'm sure everybody else has young children. This is not going to be a town that you're going to want them to grow up in unless we start doing something about it. So how about this? What do I need to do to help you?
I don't know that I have that answer.
Well, then I'll keep coming and I'll keep knocking and I'll keep
Let me know
pounding
what-
pavement.
I have over the years had substantial issue with the police contract. I've addressed it through appropriate channels and through just general griping too. And I think over the last couple of months, our police service has improved greatly. I have a lot of heartburn with getting rid of this police contract. But going over and over the numbers again, I don't think there's anywhere we can pull the money from. I don't like it. But I really think that we've been put in an untenable financial position to the point where there's just no way we can make that payment. There's nothing we can do to make these payments and still have money left at the end of the year. And we can't keep borrowing against money and assets that we don't have.
Yeah, mate.
Hold on one second, sir. Public comment, if you can state your name.
Derek Peters. As soon as y'all cut this contract, the heroin's gonna get so much worse. And what was it, a month ago, we had 3 people OD, 2 of them died. And it's just gonna get worse. Are we gonna trade the lives of the people here for money? I mean, we gotta figure out something. Because I lost a good friend about a month ago. And I can't stand to see the police department leaving. Now that we actually have officers that are walking around, parking their cars and actually walking the alleys and the streets, and then we're just gonna let them go. And the heroin's gonna come in full throttle. I mean, it's gonna be so much in here, it's not even funny. And the state police, yeah, they'll drive through. Yeah, they'll come around when we need help. But they're not gonna be walking the alleys and the streets and talking to people and figuring stuff out. If it's about the money, we gotta figure it out. But I know a lot of us don't wanna trade the lives of the people here in Duncannon because of a money issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on, Mr. Leonard.
I've been born
You
and
can
raised.
state your name, please.
Louis Thomas Howard Jr. I've been born in this town, raised in this town. I've been in this town for a long time. And it is going downhill. You know, I have a place right beside me, 120 North Market Street. That guy has the one that's up there where the guy OD'd at. The young kids are coming in down there at night. So what is he doing in there? And I caught him out back smoking pot anyway. And I turned him in. I had the police down there 4 times. And he's got these young kids coming in and out of there. And I agree with what everybody said up front there. We need the police department in this town. You guys don't have to deal with it half the time. The people who live in the town do. A lot of you people live in the town here, you council. But you're sitting behind your doors, nice, quiet, real cozy place. I've been out and I see a lot going on in the town. You guys are sitting in your little cubby hole, not caring what's going on. You're worried about what you guys are doing. And then you're talking about you don't have the finance half the time. There you went and spent $50,000 for a building up here that was falling down, and then they turn around and you give it away. So what happened there?
I'd just like to respond to you in saying that several of the people sitting at this table were the chief among those speaking out against that $50,000 investment and then divestment.
Yeah, that's
And
stupid.
further, I live in the square and I see it going down just as much as you do. I get where you're coming from, but the money's just not there. I can't make it up.
Well, people paying taxes and stuff, where's the tax money and stuff going?
I don't have my name on the list, but I have one question.
I believe some hands up. You hold on, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. Kerkhoff.
And in interest of transparency, Jeff is my son, but that's not why I'm here. My husband and I are looking to move into the borough. We live in Kent Township now. But we decided a few months ago to move into the borough, so I'm now more concerned than ever. And where my confusion is with this whole thing is, so you were here and you gave the information, and some time between last meeting and this meeting, you found something else out that caused this meeting to be called.
Well, we found some new information, but I think there was some information that was discussed at the last meeting. I was not here at the time of that discussion, and I believe the issue,
There was almost no discussion. There
Right.
was 2 questions asked. Frank asked me if we could pay the third quarter, if we had the money to pay the third quarter. Yes, we do. I mean, do we have bank balances to pay the third quarter? In the timber fund, do we have it?
last time we were here at the meeting, I would have said yes if that was the case.
That was what that
For the
question was.
third quarter.
The rest was, I talked to you 5 minutes ahead of time of that. And you had told me, I had asked what we needed to make it through the end of the year out of the timber, and you said $120,000. That's what the number you told me.
That's what I thought the general fund was going to be short, yes.
So I went to the timber fund and I saw $220,000. We can cover that. To me, that is enough cause to keep the police in town.
Okay.
My only disagreement with that, and I'm not disagreeing with you on what you just said, that was part of our discussion, but we also need operating capital when we get to the beginning of a year.
I understand that.
But the public doesn't understand this. When we get to January 1 in a borough like this, and our major source of revenue is tax revenue, we don't begin collecting that till April or May, so we can't spend our balance down to zero and still provide services from January through April. We couldn't pay for them, we couldn't pay our employees. So we can't spend a timber fund or a general fund or anything else down to zero. So only in that context will I disagree with what you said, Mr. Kirkhoff. We can't spend the entire timber fund. We need literally $150,000 to $175,000 of what I'll call cash flow.
But my question
To
actually
operate
isn't
the tax
financial. My question is, what was presented at the last meeting, either if you weren't here via what people understood from you. At some point, something changed. It was approved to pay the contract at that meeting. Somebody made a decision not to pay it.
Here's my understanding, and I don't want to put Jeff on the spot, and I'm not putting you on the spot. How it was relayed to me was that I said it was okay to pay the third and fourth quarter police invoices, and I never said that.
I listened to the recording today, and I did not say that he did either. I said after my discussion.
I never
with you-
said that. You know, I don't believe
Right,
we.
no, but like I said, my question is financial. It's like,
Right.
what happened? You might not be the one to answer it. Somebody called this meeting tonight.
I initiated it.
Okay, so you got information, something different from them.
Based on an email discussion with Mr. Morgan, as well as reviewing this information with the public. That was Mr. Morgan.
Okay,
I'm Mr.
you
Morgan.
shared it with some people on the council? Or like,
No, that email conversation was open to the whole council.
okay, so these papers, everybody, this is the first that you've seen, that you've seen
What-
this information?
This
I'm just
this
curious
set of this set of papers.
Participated in this meeting.
This set of papers.
Yeah.
Last meeting,
Doesn't make sense.
one of the papers is just a duplicate of last meeting. You were referred to as having done some calculations in the minutes or in the meeting or whatever.
I just explained my calculation.
Yeah, I didn't have those calculations. I don't want those calculations. You just looked at the timber balance and said there was enough cash there to pay.
There's enough cash to cover the reserve.
Yeah, and there are a lot of variables beyond that, obviously, that are coming to light. You know, so we didn't know what the concrete financial situation was at
I
the
don't-
last
I don't
meeting. I
think
think
my-
we'd all agree on that. Everybody who was in a finance committee meeting with me knew I said, we clearly don't know. We only know what we know at this point. You know, the balances are the balances and the cash balances are not good, and we've gotten all our revenue. You know, and we still gotta pay half the year's bills, which means, just like your checkbook at home, if you have no money in it, you can't write a check to pay the bill. So if we want to borrow from the timber fund, and that's a council prerogative, okay? That is a council prerogative, that is not my prerogative, I'm not here to advise them on that, I'm here to tell them where they're at financially. If council wants to spend 100% of your timber reserve money, go ahead and do it. You're gonna pay the price later if you do that, but go ahead and do it, to get through the year. You may have to borrow money from other funds to get through the year, legal or illegal, borrowing it from other funds and then pay it back. But you will be further in the hole by the end
I
of the year.
understand all that. I was trying to find
So-
out this was what was voted on, and somebody decided not to pay it. And
I don't
just
think the
wondered how
question's for you.
I made the request for the meeting in concurrence with 3 other council members after a discussion last week of public safety.
It
I
wasn't the
also,
finance committee who made the decision, it was just 3
it was
council
public
members.
safety who made the decision, well, it wasn't just the public safety committee, it was me in
It's
concurrence with 3 other
confusing to me
council members.
how that happened, like,
Because of a discussion that came up at the public safety meeting regarding the finances of making
Well,
this
what was
payment.
that discussion? I want to know it.
The discussion was that I believe that we weren't all kind of playing to the same sheet of music here. That I thought, I misunderstood what Mr. Kirkhoff said, and I think a number of us did. And I want this council to be able to make a decision based on understanding all of the information. And I walked away from the meeting believing that the council did not understand all the information. That was what made me initiate requesting this meeting.
So based on everything that was going to be paid for third quarter, that was approved to be paid for third quarter, this was the one thing that we decided that we had conflict on.
We don't pay our bills quarterly, we pay
Well,
our bills monthly.
In all fairness,
Contracts quarterly.
hold on a second, in all fairness, the third quarter police contract payment is about 60 to 70% of all the general fund payments for the quarter. So you have to look at the magnitude of this payment. Some gentleman asked here what happens to your tax revenue. You only collect about $155,000 in tax revenue in this borough, and your police contract alone is $170,000.
What?
So,
Per quarter?
no,
Oh,
annually.
here.
Oh,
You collect $155,000 in taxes, and your police contract's $170,000. So
Is that
That's-
real estate
that's-
taxes? What about the
the
EIT taxes?
EIT taxes are about $100,000, but typically your real estate taxes pay for the police services.
So we have
When you
2
look-
funding sources, the EIT and
Right,
real
but
estate.
but
That's
you,
it.
but they also, but
That's
those other taxes also have to pay for your highway, your snow removal, your street cleaning, your storm sewer management, your administration, your billing and collection, your tax collection fees, down the line, codes enforcement, Parks and Rec, it pays for all those other things. So you can't spend that money several times for both public safety and all those other services. So this issue, when we look at it in the EIP, and I'm getting way ahead of where I should be, but when we look at this in the EIP plan, you've got what's called a structural deficit, okay? Which means your revenue base, your tax base is insufficient to cover the costs of maintaining the borough. And some people may get upset, and I haven't done a complete assessment, but I believe your staffing is very lean, given all your employees are asked to do here in the borough. You run 4 utilities, you run snow plowing, street sweeping, kind of a debris removal, storm sewer management, whatever, and you're running that with 3 full-time and 3 part-time employees. Most boroughs have multiple part-time employees, or full-time employees in each one of those functions. You're also running with a single manager, 1 fiscal person, a part-time billing clerk, and a part-time secretary. So, first of all, I believe one of the fiscal problems is you're understaffed in fiscal to have somebody adequately do the work, which is going to cost you more, but that's why the information is as bad as it is. 2, I believe there's inadequate training for those people. There was a new system put in 2007. I don't believe anybody ever understood how to work the system. And she just left, or she was sitting here, but Gina was
People that
here.
understood it are no longer with the borough.
I don't even believe some of those people understood some of the functions of the system
I-
from what I've seen.
Yes,
They understood it better, I believe,
correct.
but they didn't understand the system.
There were some issues in the
Yeah,
beginning.
and there
that
are
I
issues,
know of, Yes.
And they're glaring when you look at the system.
Yes.
So given that, you're in a situation with a structural deficit where you don't have a means to work your way out. When you're facing 75% or 100% tax increases, that's not realistic. You just drive more people out of town and you bring more bad people into town. And I don't mean to say it the way it is, but that's the way it is. So you have some assets in the borough and you have 4 utilities, okay? Most municipalities, when they face this, and don't shoot the messenger, please. I'm just gonna say it. You have assets, most municipalities begin to look at selling those assets to work your way out of these situations. Whether it be your water and sewer system or your electric system or something, and you put enough money in the bank that the earnings off that money makes up that structural deficit on an annual basis, and then you have gradual tax increases and keep pace with inflation. The other problem you've had is taxes haven't gone up really here in the borough in a few years. You know, they've been stable, and that was a disservice to you all. You've got to know as the general public, if your costs go up and the revenue doesn't go up, somebody's not paying a bill, and they didn't pay the bill. They found a way to make it work, and in fairness to this council had no idea. I don't know what reports prior council got, but if they got the reports this council was getting, you couldn't tell anything from those reports fiscally. So I'm not sure the prior boards even knew about this issue, other than I believe the audit firm should have come in and talked to them. And if they did, shame on the prior boards, because they gave an adverse opinion. You know, and audit firms are obligated to communicate with the boards. They can't shun that obligation and not come talk to them. So the prior audit firm talked to somebody on the prior board, and somebody did nothing or hid that from the rest of you and the public. So shame on them. But you are in a tough fiscal position, but you have to make a decision, and reconsidering a motion isn't the end of the world. This is just a motion, and I want to make this clear, at least this is my understanding, and I don't want to speak for council. My understanding is you're reconsidering a motion to pay the third quarter bill right now. I think this is being interpreted as that's a termination of the police services contract. That may or may not be the case on how council wants to go. You may just vote now to table not paying that bill until we come up with a plan to pay the bill. Now, if I'm Penn Township, and I don't know if they're still here, but if I'm Penn Township, I might have a little heartburn over that because I'm going to provide police service and not know what I'm going to pay for doing it. I'd have a little problem with that, but that's kind of the dilemma the board is in right now facing this. I don't think anybody on this board wants to terminate your police services, at least that I've talked to. That isn't the idea, but you may be facing that somewhere down the road just from a financial realistic standpoint. That may be your only option for police service. Or if everybody here wants to raise their hand and say, I'll gladly pay double my property tax, then the board's got an easy decision. You know, that's really what it comes down to. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but that's what it comes down to. So
I just want to say, I did think that we should look into selling some utilities, that with the current regulatory atmosphere, that they can come in and have us throw money out, and the part of these bills are from that. They're telling us we have to do this, have to do that, come up with the money. That a big company, although it might seem like a profit-oriented company would be more expensive, is better equipped to handle the day in and day out operations of that. They already have trucks, they already have employees, they already have lawyers, and they already have, and they can't just come in and raise your rates. They have to get approval by the PUC to do it. I think that is something that we really need to seriously consider. Number two, I do feel personally that this meeting, although this is an important discussion we're having, this meeting is really only about the spending of $42,000. Am I not wrong right now?
Right.
So let's keep focused on that now that we've gotten past all this. It's not what are we going to do about the future? The sky is falling. It's can we pay this $42,000 and keep this force in effect until the end of that 3-month period while we're, I believe, negotiating for a readjustment on that contract. Is that not true?
Are we even going to renegotiate? Because last meeting we were going to negotiate, and I was just told there was no negotiations.
There were no negotiations since the last meeting then, because of this other information coming to light.
But there was an intention to do that.
There still is an intention to do that if we
Right.
continue on with the police contract.
So that's what this is really about. This is about $42,000 and some odd dollars.
To answer your question, Tim, a letter did go from the Public Safety Committee to Penn Township Supervisors, was discussed at their meeting on tomorrow, Wednesday will be 2 weeks ago, the regular meeting. They formed a committee comprised of Mr. Landis, who's seated in the back row, their chief of police, Rick Pickles, and their attorney to be their negotiating committee for that contract. So there was action taken in that direction, but no sit-down has taken place yet.
Okay.
Was there somebody else that wanted to speak publicly? Mr.
I
Hamilton?
didn't sign up, but I wanted to know, how can you legally get away with not having an audit done in those prior years? The boroughs,
Well, there were audits done. In 2013, there was an audit done, and the audit gave a clean opinion, said everything is fine and reported balances. In 2014, an audit was done, but it gave what was called an adverse opinion. So in terms of having an audit done, the borough satisfied the obligation to have the audit done and had an audit report. It's not good what it says, but it basically says that the borough's books and records were in poor condition and they couldn't give an opinion on the numbers. The 2015 audit technically is due by September 30th, but until 2014 is rectified that somebody can audit numbers, you need to have a starting point to begin an audit. And they never got to a ending point in 2014, so you can't begin a 2015 audit if you don't have bank balances. So you're kind of in a stuck position until we fix the 2014 records and get an audit that's not an adverse opinion. It can be qualified, but not an adverse opinion. And then begin to audit 15, we can't really get caught up.
one of the reasons I was on the council back in the early 2006, 7, our police cost for the year was $280-some thousand a year. We had our own, but we always balanced. Never once did we not have audits done.
Yeah, I don't know what the expenditures were. What time frame was that?
6, 7, and 8.
206, 207, 208.
208. I'll go back and pull some of those records and see what the budgets
The other
look
thing is,
like. I
other
don't know what they
question
look
is,
like. I didn't go that far
Are
back.
we losing money with the garbage, or are we making any money with the profit with the garbage?
Well, on a cash basis, the answer is yes, we're making money. But if you were operating on an accrual basis, the way the rest of the world does and the way business does, if you depreciate your garbage truck because you have to replace it and consider you paid for it, you're probably losing money.
We had to do that too.
Yeah. But because
That's not a cash expense, and we do have some of that. I get what you're saying.
it is though, if you truly capture the expense
If we capture
and measure
depreciation expense,
it
it's not
by
cash,
period,
but
by period, and not.
But we also have enough money that we could probably buy a garbage truck.
We have $100,000 in there, but if you were truly measuring an accrual basis expense, which is the way you're supposed to measure enterprise
Oh, I
funds.
completely, I understand. I'm
Back
just-
in 1999, 2001, 2002, 2003.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have access to those records. I think that the new system that was put in only goes back to '07. So that's, I could go
Are we
back
still
to.
public comment, just,
Is there any other public comment?
Over here.
Okay.
Hi. I'm Jackie Green. I live at Broadway and Market, so right at the lake. I'm not a good public speaker, so I just wrote it down. I have lived here nearly 18 years, but have visited here my whole life. My grandparents lived on High Street. My father grew up here. I have known this town my whole life. I care about this town. I'm raising 2 children here. I want my kids to be raised in a safe community. My husband came here from Allentown nearly 8 years ago and could not believe that I leave my house unlocked, my keys in a car with my purse. I told him, this is Duncannon. It's not the same place you came from. But in the last 2 years, I feel this town is spiraling out of control and is falling apart. Security I once felt is gone. My husband, myself, and my, at the time, 3-year-old son witnessed a boy fall over in front of our house from apparent overdose. My husband told me he found needles in Noy Park. 2 people died at my neighbor's house, and in another incident, 1 died but was revived. Multiple have been arrested under the underpass at the end of my road, drinking and doing drugs. All of the problems directly affected me personally, when my car was broken into in a string of break-ins done by a heroin addict. He used one of the blocks right in front of my house, my retaining wall, and threw it through my car window. He overdosed that night, but walked free out of the hospital. It crushed my heart more because the town I once knew was no longer the place I had known. All of these have happened just on my corner. I imagine it would be worse throughout the rest of the town. But in the last few months, I have felt positive change with the Penn Township Police Department. I see more of a presence. I feel they will make change if given a chance. They are going through the parks and cemeteries again. They are monitoring speed in front of my house. I see them near the underpass more often at the end of my road. They seem to be communicating better with the residents. I feel they are pursuing the drug issues as well. And I walk every night on High Street and I see them at least 3 times during my short walk. It saddens me that we are in the position we are. It deeply saddens me. We as citizens have to help correct these problems, and we need a police presence or it will only get worse. I know we can make this town great again, and I believe you all have the same objectives. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Jack. Anyone else?
One quick question. We keep talking about what it's going to cost for Penn Township to continue on if we have to pay this, but has anybody asked the state police what we're going to have to pay them?
At this point, there would be no financial obligation to the state police for their coverage.
For how long? I mean, how long would they come in here and cover us if they had to?
Indefinitely.
Indefinitely.
At this time, there's no state law requiring municipalities to pay for state police coverage.
Okay, so we don't know the answer to the question I'm going to ask because they're not coming till next week, but would they bring constables in to walk the streets? Would they patrol more? From what they were telling me, they need to know when we would have to have them start and how many people there are in a municipality, because they would have to bring in more officers. That answers one question. They would bring in more officers, but can we expect constables to walk the streets?
I don't know.
No.
Anything like that. Hold on. Margie's got the floor.
That was it. That's my question.
I think those are answers we simply don't know. And I think that
Lunchtime and dinner time at Sorrento's.
regardless of what happens with item number 6 on the agenda, you know, we've had Penn Township providing police coverage since July 1, unpaid. We haven't paid the 3rd quarter. If the action takes place to continue to not pay it tonight in that reconsideration, I don't know what Penn Township will do. If they'll immediately cease at midnight tonight, if they'll give us another month, if they'll give us another couple months, kind of in good faith on credit, I simply don't know. I'm confident in saying that none of the 7 people plus sitting at this table are looking to cause any public safety disaster that we don't already have. I'll offer that we've had a contract with Penn Township Police Department since 2012. And I think Jackie's comments were just in the last couple months, have we seen an improvement? And I'll agree with that.
Absolutely.
I'll agree that there's been much better presence and much more visible presence in the borough by Penn Township Police Department. There's certainly an issue on equity within the contract, and there, I think, was a performance issue with the contract and with the services provided by the police department. That's gotten better. Those are separate issues from the financial issue we're discussing tonight. Totally apart from all of that, I think we've got a very serious set of financial challenges, and a lot of unknown, a lot that's still unknown that we're not going to know for weeks or months or maybe ever with public money. None of this has happened in the last 7 months or 8 months, and none of this has happened in a short period of time. This has happened over a long period of time. And this council, 4 of these members are brand new to elected office and elected in this table. And you know, we've been saddled with this to try to work through it. And that's where we are right now. If there's no further public comment, we'll move on to number 6, which is the reconsideration of the previously approved payment.
There is another public comment, if I can.
Sure.
We got $120,000 in a trash fund, and we're talking about not paying. The trash fund makes money, does it not?
It's had yes, it's been positive over
On
the
a
years,
cash
yes.
basis, yes,
Yes.
but
Right,
that's not
I mean,
accounting
I'm
for
hearing all this
appreciation.
gloom and doom, 750,000 in the hole with the reservoir, the culvert, and some of the other outstanding debt. Is that including
No,
grant?
projects,
or
that's
is that-
not debt, that's the projects.
Is that including grant money?
No.
Okay, so if you put the grant money in, if we do get the grant money, where are we set? Did we calculate any of that?
The grant money's only for use to correct the accounting issue.
No, for the culvert. Weren't we looking at a
We
a
didn't.
grant?
We didn't pass, we had too
We
much
didn't qualify
traffic.
for that.
All right, what about the reservoir?
The culvert grant, we didn't get because we had 800 cars and we needed 500 or less. The reservoir is not a grant,
Not a
that would
grant.
come out of the water fund, we're looking at probably $100,000, that's not a split cost.
And that'll be next year, correct?
It's
You just
supposed,
do
it
the
was,
paperwork, DEP paperwork.
We're waiting,
push us
we're waiting
in.
for DEP right now, they told us we had to do it December 31st, we had to fix the problem, we identified the problem, so it needs a liner. That took the last couple months to do that. Now we're waiting for DEP to approve the permit because it changes our water system permit to be able to put the liner in. So there's a process, we have to make sure the standpipe can handle the load and the volume while the reservoir's drained again. So I don't think we can give you a concrete date, we're waiting for DEP to give some approval there.
Okay.
The sewage issues we've already identified are probably upwards of $200,000. There is a split there with Penn Township. We have two of our members that are on the sewer authority that aren't there now because they're here, that meeting's going on right now. We did receive, or are receiving, almost $800,000 in grant money for the water system, but we have a 2013 report that shows $20 million worth of work that the water system does or will need.
That's over like the next 30 or 40 years though, correct?
It's the next 30 years
30 years, so.
from that date.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's significant because that was a projected number, we don't know how that
We
will.
don't know where it's gonna
It's
come in.
gonna be more than the 19 million.
The problem with that whole system and the sewer is, we don't know what Washington DC is gonna send us a bill for and what we have to do tomorrow, and that's what's killing those funds.
the unfunded mandates.
I mean, we're sitting here wondering if we can pay $40,000 to pay our police, and we get a letter that says you better spend $95,000 now, or we're gonna come in and confiscate the whole thing. I mean, it's ridiculous.
We presently have two violation notices. We presently have two violation notices on the record. One from December 31st, 2015 for the water system, chlorinated waters in Trout Run. The second is on the sewer plant from May or June on their inspection, and that's gonna total
Both of those are
150
pretty
to
minor,
200,000.
aren't they?
both of what?
Violations.
I don't know how they're gauged.
It's 150 grand. I mean, that's the way it is.
Is that what's gonna tie up to correct them, or is that
I mean, it's-
penalties?
I think that's been killing us. For the last 8 years, me and Craig, I mean, we're sitting here, it's almost like we're having a meeting where we're not running a town, we're running a utilities complex. That's how I felt about it.
It's the government, they come in here and they gave you the money to put into plans, but nobody looked far enough ahead to maintain them. I mean, that was the game plan all along.
Is there any other public comment? Lisa?
I know last meeting there was conversation with the borough, or the township manager, that you may have a meeting to renegotiate or discuss the coverage and expenses for the police department. When is that anticipated to happen?
I indicated earlier, that was with a township supervisor. They don't have a manager presently. A letter went from DJ as Chair of Public Safety to the township supervisors, and they appointed a committee to meet with us. A meeting has not taken place yet, but they appointed a committee consisting of Mr. Landis, who's their police department liaison, one of the supervisors, chief of police, and their solicitor. And that took place not even 2 weeks ago. Is there any other public comment? Yes, sir.
Has the borough thought about going sovereign and just joining Penn Township?
I've thought about that a lot.
The individuals here have, I don't believe this doesn't approve.
That's a thought to discuss.
And I think, this is me speaking by myself, I believe that the reality of the situation is Duncannon Borough is landlocked. We've got a declining earned income tax. We've got a declining real estate value. We've got significant infrastructure and operational issues, and now significant financial issues. We've got a population on paper of 1,500 people. The reality is it's probably closer to 1,000. We probably got more vacant or empty for sale properties today than we've ever had in history, my assumption. I don't know how the Borough of Duncannon can continue to exist as the Borough of Duncannon. It may be worth reviewing, considering, looking into, maybe through the EIP, does Duncannon Borough become the Village of Duncannon in Penn Township?
Amen.
I don't know. I think it needs to at least be considered.
And when does that come about, the consideration?
Well, what got us to where we are right now is we started through the plan to try and create a financial 5-year strategic plan. That was the EIP, the Early Intervention Plan, through the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. Mr. Morgan is our contracted accountant, financial guy to start that process. He couldn't even start that process because we've got no good financial information to start that process. So we're not even to that discussion yet.
Okay.
But I believe it needs to be had at some point.
It's crossed my mind, it's in my notes to have a recommendation, at least to consider it in the EIP report. The nice part about the EIP program is once we have, if we believe, and we're relied on very heavily by the state, DCED, if we make a recommendation in the report and they grill us on it to make sure we're justified in putting it there, it releases or gets available funding for you to look into that. You get state help to pay for it. So there's a lot of good things that can happen out of this EIP report to work our way through these fiscal issues.
Locally,
it will free up a lot of money.
If you look at now, Penn Township is a township of the second class. East Pennsboro Township in Cumberland County is a township of the first class. They absorbed several years ago West Fairview Borough. West Fairview is now a village in East Pennsboro Township. I don't know if that's a good solution. I don't know what options we have.
Can Penn Township charge late payment fees?
I don't think there's any provision there for in the contract. Not that I saw.
I was just curious because
I understand. Any other, yes, sir.
I know a while ago you said about if you get rid of Penn Township Police Department, call the state police. Well, I have called back a couple of times, called the state police, and we will not handle that there, call Penn Township.
If Penn Township has the legal jurisdiction.
Penn Township has been there a couple of times, and I needed them that one time. Well, they said, you sure you gotta call Penn Township? So why are you gonna have the state police come in when they're not gonna be patrolling like they should be with our police?
With all due respect, sir, I can't speak and say they're not going to do something. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to offer. I don't know what kind of staffing they can provide. They're not here to provide that information. They're going to be here next Tuesday at 7 o'clock to provide that information. I encourage you to attend. Any other public comment?
One last question and then I'll stop, I
This is
promise. Very second, that's it. Is there any way, since we're gonna probably be double checking previous council members, and I'm thinking we should highly probably look into them as well, is there any way to get like another forester guy at the same time to come in and double check what was previously done?
We have an interaction right now with, what's the name of the firm, Chris?
That's the Nature Conservancy.
The Nature Conservancy, to do an assessment of our property. The borough has used Mr. Miser, Dennis Miser, for decades, 4 or 5 decades, I believe, for forestry services. So this is a free service, kind of a double check, and maybe compare and contrast what Mr. Miser has offered before. I don't know that, that shouldn't have been put out for bid at some point for those services. I don't believe it was. Mr. Miser, I believe, has served the borough well, and I think there was a good relationship, and has been a good relationship there. There's potentially some difference of opinion between the Conservancy's assessment and Mr. Miser. I think we heard a little bit of that tonight. But that's those timber revenues that we've historically done a cut every other year for the last probably 10, 15 years. Moving on to number 6, the reconsideration of previously approved payment to Penn Township for police services. Mr. Leonard.
I commiserate with all of you out there being concerned because we're concerned. And I don't like being told that we're not. Did you think about running for this office?
I did, sir, but because of my full-time job, I cannot hold an office position on a council, board, school board, anything like that. Trust me, it wasn't.
Are you allowed to be, are you allowed to be appointed?
Okay, I'll
I
accept
hold a
that.
federal position that does not allow me to
Well, you're covered under the Hatch Act, right?
Correct.
So you can be appointed, you just can't run in an election.
Yes, but I also hold another position that, a higher level position within the government that does not allow
Okay.
an appointed position.
Okay, I'll accept that. Now I have a question for Mr. Morgan. On the weekly banking review, for those funds that I am responsible for, water, electric, sewer, and refuge, we have outstanding checks. If my arithmetic is correct, we have outstanding checks for $111,320.46, if my arithmetic is correct.
That's correct.
My question is, most checks of today are only good for 6 months.
Correct.
And these have been outstanding for how long? Do we have any concept
Yeah,
whatsoever?
the bulk of those checks, not all, the bulk of those checks have been only outstanding for about a week. It was the previous week's bill run. Once council has ratified, and I don't recall the date in July when you ratified the bill payments, and the checks, then they get mailed out shortly thereafter. And I'm not really part of that process, but I think you would have ratified them around the 17th, I believe.
The 19th of July was the meeting.
19th of July. So they probably got mailed around the 21st, the bulk of those. I believe the check run then was around 106,000.
Okay.
So the bulk of those are outstanding, only about a week.
My big problem was,
There are a few that go back more than 6 months. We haven't had a
And-
chance to look at those yet, and my apologies, I have not had a chance time-wise to look at, there are not a significant number or dollar amount of those, but there are some. I'm gonna say it's less than
is
$5,000.
there any chance to get that?
Technically, we're supposed to escheat that money to the Treasury Department. So what my hope is that somebody just missed clearing it in the system and we still have the cash in the account. That it actually did clear the bank. Because what has happened in the past, just so everybody understands this report, this bank balance here, and this whole sheet gets us down to a de facto checkbook balance, because the balance in the accounting system in every fund shows huge negative balances. That's how out of whack the accounting system is. So this sheet is effectively calculating an available cash balance to pay bills, is how the borough's been running for the last 2.5 years.
Assuming the bank makes no errors.
Correct. Assuming the bank's correct. Banks are about 99.99% correct. I'm not saying they haven't made a mistake, but they're pretty reliable. I'm not saying we don't have one, but we needed something to go by, so since we couldn't get a good handle on any other number, we had to start with the bank balance and kind of reconstruct back to a checkbook balance.
Okay, I was concerned that maybe some of those checks were null and void.
There are a handful. There are a handful we have to look into.
That frightened the hell out of me.
No, we have a handful. And truly, if they have not been cashed, by law, we are obligated to escheat those funds to the Pennsylvania Treasury Department. We cannot keep that money. It is those contractors or vendors' money that we paid. And quite frankly, they should have been escheated 2 years ago, some of those checks.
At our July 19th meeting, there was a motion and action to pay the third quarter contribution or payment for Penn Township's contracted police services. That amount was $42,000. $42,290. That check was signed once, was not countersigned in the office, and was reviewed at last Monday's public safety meeting. Is there any wish for action on that matter?
I have a question. I would like to know, how is this gonna go in the future? Because a vote was taken, a motion was made, second was made, a vote was taken, it passed, and then a minority decided, well, we're not gonna pay it. And it's been 3 weeks. This bill should have been paid 3 weeks ago.
My understanding was the delay initially was a lack of a signature. Is that correct, Kathy?
I didn't sign it, but there are other people who can sign it.
Historically, though, you've signed
I've signed.
that check.
Oh, I've never signed that check, I don't think.
Not for
Maybe
first or
once when
second
Chris
quarter.
wasn't here. My role, from what I understand from when I was given this position, was that I am the emergency signer. Chris was rarely here. I signed many times. I didn't sign this time. I was busy doing things on the Friday before my vacation that I had to do because no one else could do them. I left. I went on vacation. It wasn't signed when I came back. I don't understand why I have to sign it when I was gone that long. It should have been signed.
Well, if you're just the emergency, you wouldn't have to sign.
Yeah, I'm the assistant treasurer. Treasurer is
Oh,
supposed to
okay.
sign it typically.
We'll
That's
have,
what I was
we'll have
told.
the personnel discussion in the appropriate session. We'll not have that discussion in public. It's a personnel matter.
Is this something you didn't sign? Is that what I'm getting a
It's
feel
a
for? You're
person,
getting
it's a
little
personnel
defensive there,
matter.
like
No,
you are the guy that
No.
should have signed it.
no, I'm avoiding being defensive in public. It's a personnel matter and we will discuss it.
At the public safety
We're
meeting.
not labeling,
Yeah,
that's not
that's-
good.
I'm just needle, I mean.
I, just to stop with the office staff right now, as of last Monday, I pulled the check. I was under the impression that we were gonna have this meeting. I had a majority of the rest of the council in agreement with me to
Wait,
have
last
this meeting.
Monday? Because I didn't find out the meeting until Friday, so. I just have a problem that the check was pulled. Now you're telling me on Monday the check was pulled. Then we don't find out a meeting till Friday. I have a big problem with that because that's not the majority, that's the minority, and that's,
Jeff, I believe I left you a voice message on Wednesday, and I believe you got an email on Wednesday.
I think I got the email Thursday and you called me on Friday, I believe. It was Thursday or Friday. It was not Monday.
In any case, we're arguing about dates. I pulled the check.
I was
on
off
Monday.
work, so I know it was Thursday or Friday that I got it.
That's
That's
my
fine.
question, which is this. If this is all for financial reasons, I don't understand why the public safety committee pulled the check. It should have been pulled by the
Because-
finance committee.
Because there were
That's where I don't
councilmen
understand.
at that public safety meeting
That's fine, but
who
if
did
it's
not understand.
financial reasons should go through the finance committee. Just to keep things clear.
I hear you.
Well, we had a finance meeting on Thursday and I was told that the check wasn't paid because it wasn't signed. It had nothing to do with the financial issue.
And it wasn't signed when I pulled it on Monday. But I had no way of knowing that. It was still in the office and I asked for it.
Either way, that's the minority outvoting the majority somehow, and I don't get that. I don't. There's 3 people in that committee, so there's 3 of you that could have decided it. 4 people voted yes at the last meeting. So that's 3 people circumventing the will of council, which was 4 people voting yes. And I have a problem with that.
4 members of council requested this meeting to review that decision.
You just said that the public safety committee did, and only 3 people are on
I
that
said it
committee.
came from a public safety committee.
Two weeks after the fact, when it should have already been paid. You're, okay, I have a problem with that.
I would
That's,
have assumed that it would have already been sent out at that point, but since it was still in the office and there were questions, there were councilmen who were uncomfortable with it, I pulled the check.
What right do you have to pull the check if you're not financially involved, though?
Ma'am, the time for public comment is over.
then I'll ask a
And
question.
here we are revoting on public safety because you pulled the check,
Ashley?
it's not your place.
Ashley, you're out of order.
Go in and vote.
I had a discussion
Against
with
what everybody
the
wants.
balance of the public safety committee in addition to another council member that night.
It's not how on committees
And
work.
we
Ashley.
decided to request,
This is the second warning, please stop.
and we decided to request this meeting. At that time, so that the check wasn't pulled out before there was a chance to reconsider the motion, so that everyone could understand what they were voting on. I pulled the check. I requested that they not send it out.
I'll continue to have a problem with that.
You may, but that's
I
how it
still don't believe you had the right to pull the check. The check still should have been paid.
happened. I may or may not have, but that's how it happened.
Ashley, I'll warn you, you already got two. If I don't like something, I can now call a special meeting, and if I'm in charge of paying the bill, I can not pay it, because that's what that essentially has become now, if I'm allowed to do that. Like, we've had 3 special meetings in the past 4 months, and
I believe this is our second.
this is our third. We had one at the beginning to hire Mark, we had one with the sewer, and we had this one. This is the third one. And that's in my 4 months on council. And
The Borough Code authorizes the president or a majority of council to request a special meeting. The suggestion was made at the public safety meeting with Daryl, myself, and Frank present to have the meeting. The 3 of us concurred. I think Daryl also talked to Christie and Ron specific to that. And my understanding is they were in agreement that we should have a further discussion.
I talked to Ron, so I don't think Ron was part of that, because I talked to Ron after the meeting was called. He had no idea about it. So I'll just say that Christie makes it for, I guess.
Is there any wish for action?
I put a motion on the floor. The motion stands as previously voted upon to pay the third quarter payment.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Kirkhoff to maintain the previous past motion to maintain payment for the third quarter. Is there any further discussion?
So my request for clarification on the bills and the money that's already been transferred, did that take into account us paying this expenditure for the third quarter?
Yes, the expenditure is in the checks to be written number on the bank balance analysis.
Okay.
Because the check was cut. So it is in the analysis that I handed to you tonight.
I have a question. We're almost halfway into this quarter, isn't that right? So we're gonna be responsible for that since we didn't officially notify them that we don't render services. So actually, we're talking about a half quarter here. We're still gonna have to pay $21,000 of that, right?
We're going to have to
We're gonna pay the 42
Right.
because that's the motion
But,
stand.
I mean, yeah, so this is down to $21,000 at this point.
Where does the ball stand for, now Penn Township has established their committee, we have indicated the Public Safety Committee representing us. Whose responsibility is it to set up that next conversational meeting?
I'm going to set up that meeting.
Do we have an estimated timeline?
I can send the email out tomorrow. I stopped working on that because of the decision to have this meeting.
I think I'll add 2. I'm on the finance committee, and in the 4 months I've been on the finance committee, the majority of our time has been spent talking about fees. I have a degree in finance. I've never been called to be asked a question about the finances of this borough. Never once. I've never been asked to come in and look at anything. I have trouble getting financial information. 3 weeks ago I asked for the treasurer's reports for December through April. I haven't gotten them. I think that needs to change. I think that needs to be reevaluated. Finance committee hasn't done anything. We've talked about the fee schedule. That's the biggest thing we've done so far.
And at this point, what are we able to do, Jeff?
We can start trying to plan ahead. We're talking about let's be proactive. We're sitting here and going, let's let the EIP do it. Let's let the EIP do it. Let's let the EIP do it. That's stupid. I'm sorry.
How
That's
can we be
stupid.
proactive? What can we be
Mark,
proactive about?
Could we work from today? Could we not set a balance and say, this is where we're going to start from? The balance is wrong. We'll admit the balance is wrong. But we can work from this number and make sure all of our transactions are correct. Can we do that? Then we can start. We can at least do
But
something.
what planning can we do? We have no idea what money we have.
We can look through the number. If we're talking about how we're so broke, we can look through and find the places to cut expenses. That's things that a finance committee can do. Yet we've never discussed that stuff. All we've talked about is fees. I think that that's a disservice too. We should be actually doing something proactive. We can look through. Yes, we know we're going to have to cut costs. Let's do it. Let's find them instead of we didn't talk about anything.
And when I came in on council, the first proactive thing I did was went and talked to the auditor and be given an audit report that was not provided.
I'm glad you did that. But now, sitting now and doing nothing, is not the way to.
It's
respond to
not
that.
doing nothing. We have no idea where we are. How can we have any idea where we can go?
We initiated the process, Jeff, for the EIP, and
And I understand, but he agrees with me that we need to go somewhere. We can't just, but that's what I'm saying, so why am I
We can
wrong?
have a finance committee, but Jeff, when you say you asked for the treasurer's report, what reports are those? Because I haven't seen a treasurer's package.
That's what our report was called, the treasurer's report. It was our weekly bank, it was our bank balance.
This
Bank
weekly
balance.
banking review
Okay.
was
Was
all we
treasurer's
had.
report? Okay.
We were given the bills to be ratified and,
And then the CD spreadsheet.
right, that
I
was
wanted
the
the spreadsheet, 'cause that's
treasure.
the closest thing to the balance.
So
Yeah.
council, just so I'm clear, council has never seen really a budget to actual expenditure and revenue
This community
analysis.
hasn't seen it. The
Okay.
one time it was provided was when the budget was rolled out, October.
What I will give you,
At
you
1
know,
a.m.
and I will get that out to council through Chris, this weekend. You will have through the end of July, budget to actual on all the revenues. Now, I'm not saying they're right.
We've had that,
But
we
you'll
got
have
that
the
last
system.
month.
I think you probably get the general fund last month. I think Chris
Yeah,
did
yeah, we
something.
did. Yeah, we got
Chris
Anything
did
out of-
something,
Anything
but
out of microfund is not accurate.
It's not reliable, but it's
It's not
better than
reliable.
having nothing.
That's
It's better
what
than
I- like-
having nothing.
I'm used to working with limited information, and there's things you can tell from that. You can't get the whole story, but like just saying something's, oh, well, we know it's not right, so it's useless, that's not true.
One of the things I think will provide some value that we can do in the interim is certainly start to take a look at a 2017 budget, at least for the general fund. Because our revenue base is not going to go up, if anything, it's going down. And our expenditures, most of those expenditures are for services, what I call basic community services, that really aren't very flexible unless you want to just leave your roads unplowed or, leaves pile up and storm sewers flood and all that stuff. So we need to take a look at how we're going to plan to balance that, and that's one thing we can start working on pretty aggressively, because we're going to have to do a budget anyway. And not that I'm saying we have totally reliable information, but we can work from pieces of information on that, like tax duplicates, and we know the millage rates, and we've got monthly EIT report collections, so we've got our two biggest sources of revenue nailed down. Our cable franchise fees don't change, our pension state aid doesn't change, so, we can nail down 95% of the revenue, and then we can take a hard look at the expense side. Which may lead us back to making some cuts this year.
Can we get a vote, Mr. President, please?
Is there any other discussion on the motion?
Yes, right now. Oh, no, not on the motion, go ahead.
Let's do a roll call vote, Ken.
Do you want to reiterate what it was? Voting yes for?
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Kirkhoff, to make the payment for the third quarter police services for Penn Township as was acted at the July regular meeting.
Okay, Mr. Crothermel.
No.
Mr. Epley.
Yes.
Mr. Landhart.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Yes.
Ms. Young.
Yes.
Mr. Nace.
No.
Motion carries
Motion
5-2.
Is there any further discussion relative to the Penn Township Police Services contract?
Yes.
Can I
There
please
is a
be
check
excused?
$10,000. That helps pay the 21,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want to hear any more about it. This is one of the reasons I have said none of us here sitting at this table should be paid anything. That would be one cost we could do without. It doesn't come to much, but it's worth something.
Unfortunately, you couldn't have done that for 4 years anyhow. That would
I know, I realize, but it's one step.
Well, here's.
The longest journey starts with one freaking step.
We
Now
thank
let's step.
We thank you for your contribution for sure. Also, the mayor's budget for expenses, I give that all back to this year's budget. Just zero me out and put it back into your budget. However, going forward, what I think is important here is that we have this negotiation as soon as possible with Penn Township to see if it can be remedied, to also talk about an alternate plan. I think it's really important that we have a timberman come in and see if we can do a timber cut this year, to see if we can raise some funds to help balance our budget while we try to work a way to make this all work in the long run. And also, Chris, if you give me the numbers of usage on the water, I have talked to Suez Water Company, who is interested in talking to us, but not without the numbers of usage and customers. And that might provide a great relief for us, as it could be in the millions of dollars. So, I mean, that's my plan to work. I hope we can get there somehow or another.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay.
Christie?
A couple comments that I would like to make. First and foremost, everybody at this table is a resident of the borough because we have to be. And I don't think that we hide in our houses when it comes to the double overdose that happened. I was the first one on the scene, and Mr. Crothermel was the paramedic that was on paid crew for that. So we're certainly not hiding in our homes. We are very aware of what's going on in this community. The other comment mumbled that I would like to address is a word that I take particular exception to, and that's corruption. There is a group of individuals up here that are working diligently to try to work through a virtually impossible situation that we have inherited. The 4 individuals that came on here have 0 public service experience as far as being in political office, and to claim corruption is arrogant and rude. And I really struggle to have that label placed on the individuals at this table, because it couldn't be further from the truth. If there is a single person in this room that has an issue with anything that I have done or any individual at this table, I welcome you to come and have the conversation at Sereno's or anywhere else that you'd like to meet up with me. I really, really do not appreciate those kinds of comments to undermine the positive things we're attempting to do. We didn't cause this. We inherited it. And we're not trying to cover it up. We're trying to swim through it and get to the place where we all wanted to be in the first place. And it's certainly not sitting here having a conversation of how we're going to pay for police coverage in this town that's overflowing with heroin. So again, anybody that wants to have a conversation, you folks, I'd be glad to have a conversation. But I would very much appreciate that my integrity not be brought to question until that opportunity has provided itself. Thank you.
Here, here.
Amen. Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion. Motion by Mr. Crotharm, second by Mr. Kirkhoff to adjourn. The comment is that the printed agenda has the wrong date. This was copied from an old agenda. The correct date of our regular meeting is next Tuesday. That's August 16th at 7 p.m. Motion to adjourn. Is there any further discussion? 7 p.m. The regular meeting. All those in favor give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.